tempestuous waters of 16th century Ireland, one name struck fear into the hearts of English naval commanders and inspired legends among her people. Grania Mhae, aka Grace O'Malley. She was a fearless pirate queen, cunning diplomat, and indomitable chieftain. Grace's life was a story weaved with rebellion, adventure, and defiance against both the English crown and the constraints placed on women of her era. Grace's story begins with the Omai or O'Malley clan, a seafaring dynasty that ruled the waters of Clew Bay in what is known as modern-day County Mayo for over 300 years. Their territory, known as Umho, spanned the rugged coastline and islands of Western Ireland, a region strategically vital for controlling Atlantic trade routes. The O'Mais were not mere pirates. They were shrewd traders, tax collectors, and diplomats, exacting tolls from merchant ships in exchange for safe passage. Their motto, Terra Marique Potens, which translates to powerful by land and sea, reflected their dual dominance. Grace's father, Owen Dubdara O'Mai, was a legendary seafarer who schooled her in navigation, warfare, and the art of negotiation. The O'Mai operated under Brecon law, Ireland's ancient legal system, which allowed women to inherit property and wield authority, a stark contrast to English customs. With this cultural backdrop, it is no surprise that Grace was empowered to defy gender norms from a young age. Born around 1530 at Belclare Castle, Grace was immersed in a world of saltwater and rebellion. Legends swirl about her childhood, like how, at age 12, Grace allegedly begged to join her father's trading voyage to Spain. When told her long hair would entangle ship ropes, she hacked it off with a dagger, earning the name Grania Mhae, Bald Grace. The tale, though dubious and mostly untrue, symbolizes her lifelong defiance. Grace, unlike most women of her time, was taught Latin, mathematics, and politics, skills she later used to negotiate with queens. She also mastered the currach, which is a traditional hide-covered boat, and the art of coastal warfare, learning to exploit tides and hidden coves. At age 14, she reportedly repelled a boarding party of English sailors single-handedly, a feat that cemented her reputation among her father's crew. In her teens, Grace was captaining ships, a role unimaginable for women in neighbouring Tudor England. These early exploits foreshadowed a life spent straddling two worlds, the Gaelic aristocracy and the lawless sea. Grace's marriages were less about romance than realpolitik. In 16th century Ireland, clan alliances were survival tools, and Grace wielded them masterfully. At 15, Grace wed Donal and Chugad O'Flaithpáte, which translates to Donal of the Battle, heir to the O'Flaithpáte, a name which you might recognise as O'Flaherty. They were the lords of Connaught. This marriage merged two powerful maritime clans, extending Grace's influence from Clew Bay to Galway's shores. Grace then bore 3 children, Owen, Margaret, and Morrow, but refused to retreat to domestic life. When Donald died in a skirmish in 1560, she seized control of his castles, including Cox Castle, later known as Hen's Castle, on Lough Corrib, defying Gaelic customs that demanded widows relinquish power. She defended the fortress against the Joyce clan, earning the nickname Manana Dítog, which means woman of the sieges. Grace entered a trial marriage called handfasting with Ristad and Iarran Burke, Lord of Rockfleet Castle. The union was transactional. Ristad sought her naval prowess. Grace coveted his fortress. After a year, she famously declared, "I dismiss you from this marriage," and claimed Rockfleet as her own. The split was amicable. Rhysdir retained his lands, while Grace gained an impregnable stronghold. In 1567, while returning from a trading expedition to Portugal, Grace went into labor aboard ship. Hours after giving birth to Tibet, her crew faced an attack by Barbary corsairs. Bleeding and exhausted, she rallied her men with a roar, "Take down the sails! Let the Turks come to us, not us to them." The pirates retreated, awed by her ferocity. The son she bore, Rhysdir, Tibet, later known as Theobald, later became a British knight. A twist which highlights Grace's pragmatic diplomacy. By the 1570s, Grace commanded 200 men and a fleet of fast-moving galleys, each armed with cannons and rowed by 30 oarsmen. Her reign at this point over the Atlantic was absolute. Clew Bay's labyrinthine inlets and hidden harbours allowed Grace to vanish from pursuers. Local law claims she tied her fleet to Clare Island with chains to block English warships. Grace's operations blended piracy, trade, and proto-nationalism. She imposed tolls on ships traversing her waters. Those who refused were stripped of cargo and their crews were tossed overboard. A 1574 English report lamented, "There came no ship nor boat but paid her tribute." In 1576, after being denied hospitality at Howth Castle, home of the St. Lawrence family, Grace kidnapped the Lord's grandson. Then she released him only after the St. Lawrences vowed to forever set an extra place at their table, a tradition upheld today. England's conquest of Ireland intensified under Elizabeth I, and Grace's world collided with Sir Richard Bingham, who was also known as the Butcher of Connaught, who was a sadistic English governor of Connaught. Appointed in 1584, Bingham sought to crush Gaelic laws through terror. While he ruled as governor, he executed Grace's son Owen on trumped-up charges, seized her 1,500 cattle and 500 horses, crippling her economically. He then imprisoned her brother, Donald Napiopa, and son Maro, demanding her surrender. Grace, who was in her 60s, refused to yield. Instead, she orchestrated a daring jailbreak, freeing Donald by bribing guards with Spanish gold. Grace then allied with rebel lords like Hugh O'Neill during the 9 Years' War, which lasted from 1593 to 1603, smuggling weapons and funding guerrilla campaigns. Bingham branded her the nurse to all rebellions in the province, but his attempts to capture her failed. But in 1592, he nearly succeeded, besieging her at Rockfleet. Grace escaped by sea under cover of darkness, leaving Bingham to torch an empty castle. In 1593, Grace then sailed to London for a secret audience with Elizabeth I, a meeting which has been immortalized in folklore. Grace first wrote a letter to Elizabeth stating, "I am a poor widow, driven to defend my coast against strangers." Then she was given an audience with Elizabeth. At that time, Grace was 63 years old. In a dramatic fashion, she navigated the Thames on a stolen Spanish frigate, docking at Greenwich Palace. The meeting between the two powerful women was a study in contrasts. Elizabeth, who was also in her early 60s, bedecked in pearls and velvet, the virgin queen of a global empire. And Grace, weathered and wild-haired, wearing a sailor's tunic and dagger, fluent in Latin but refusing to bow, stating, "I am a queen too," she reportedly declared. Both women were hard-headed. Elizabeth refused to speak to Grace in Gaelic, and Grace also stubbornly refused to speak to Elizabeth in English. They did reach an impasse, though. Their negotiation was then conducted in Latin, which gave birth to a truce of sorts. Elizabeth ordered Bingham to restore Grace's lands and release Tibet. Grace then agreed to cease supporting Irish rebels. The accord was short-lived, however, as Bingham ignored Elizabeth's orders. At least Grace secured her son's freedom, proving her unmatched diplomatic cunning. Grace later returned to her island, ablaze with rebellion. Though in her 70s at the time, she led raids against English supply ships, once capturing a vessel laden with wine and gunpowder. Bingham, enraged, wrote, "She is more dangerous than any 3 men in Ireland." Grace's legend grew with Ireland's fight for independence. Folk tales cast her as a sorceress who summoned storms to sink English ships. Ballads like Grania Mahaul celebrate her as the terror of the seas. Grace has also become known as the vanguard of feminism. In a 16th century world that silenced women, Grace commanded fleets, negotiated with empires, and owned castles. Historian Anne Chambers notes, "She rewrote the rules not just for women, but for all of Ireland." There was a 2020 DNA project that linked thousands of Irish descendants to Grace. Currently, a statue in Westport, Mayo, which was unveiled in 2018, gazes defiantly toward Clew Bay. Today, some sailors whisper that Grace's ghost still patrols the Irish coast, her galleys shimmering in the mist. Whether myth or memory, her spirit endures, a testament to a woman who dared to conquer an ocean, outwit a queen, and live forever as Ireland's indomitable pirate queen. To fully grasp Grace O'Malley's defiance, one must understand the fractured Ireland of the 16th century. The island was a patchwork of Gaelic lordships, semi-independent territories ruled by dynasties like the O'Neills, O'Donnells, and O'Malleys. These clans operated under Brecon law, a system prioritizing kinship and oral tradition over English feudalism. Women could inherit land, divorce husbands, and lead armies, rights which were unthinkable in Tudor England. England's Tudor conquest of 1534 to 1603 sought to dismantle this Gaelic order. The Crown imposed the surrender and regrant policy, forcing Irish lords to renounce Brecon law, swear loyalty to the English monarch, and adopt anglicised titles. Those who refused faced brutal suppression. Grace's resistance was not mere piracy, it was a fight to preserve a vanishing world. Irish warfare mostly relied on guerrilla tactics, ambushes in forests, raids on supply lines, and hit-and-run skirmishes. Grace adapted these strategies to the sea. Her galleys, shallow-drafted and agile, outpaced England's heavier warships. She exploited fog, tides, and hidden coves, vanishing like a phantom after strikes. English admirals, trained in open naval combat, found her undeniably untouchable. Grace's dominance stemmed from both fearlessness and ingenuity. Her fleet, though outgunned, outmaneuvered opponents through galley designs, which were modelled on Mediterranean designs, combined oars and sails. They could navigate shallow waters and reverse directions swiftly, a true nightmare for bulky English vessels. She also maintained a network of spies in ports from Galway to Lisbon, tracking merchant routes and English movements. Grace flew a blood-red banner to signal attack, and rumours claimed she could charm storms to wreck her foes. This tactic was more psychological than anything. Grace's alliances extended beyond Ireland. She traded with Spain, which was then England's mortal enemy, exchanging Irish wool and fish for Spanish wine, salt, and, most crucially, weapons. During the Spanish Armada's disastrous 1588 campaign against England, Grace sheltered shipwrecked Spanish sailors, earning their gratitude and future favours. The 9 Years' War, from 1594 to 1603, marked Ireland's last stand against Tudor rule in Grace's final battle. Led by Hugh O'Neill, Earl of Tyrone, Gaelic lords united in a desperate bid for independence. Grace, now in her 70s, played a pivotal role. She smuggled Spanish arms into Ireland via Clew Bay, evading English blockades. Her raids on English supply ships financed rebel armies. A 1595 letter from O'Neill praises her as the sea wolf who feeds our cause. She pressured Spain to send troops, arguing that an Irish victory would weaken England, something the Spanish wanted very much. In 1601, Spain finally sent 3,500 troops to aid O'Neill, landing at Kinsale in Cork. Grace urged a guerrilla campaign, a tactic that has worked well for them over the years. But O'Neill ignored her experienced advice and opted for a disastrous pitched battle. The English crushed the rebels at Kinsale in 1602, dooming the war. Grace, too old to fight, watched from afar as her world crumbled. Grace died a year later in 1603 at Rockfleet Castle, weeks only after Elizabeth's death. Her burial site remains unknown, though some claim she lies in the Cistercian Abbey of Clare Island. Her epitaph, if found, might read as Bingham's grudging tribute: a woman who overstepped the part of womanhood. Grace's children walked divergent paths, reflecting Ireland's turbulent assimilation into England's empire. Owen, who was executed by Bingham in 1586 for rebellion, became a martyr in Gaelic songs. Margaret, married into the O'Donnell clan, died young but passed Grace's stories to her descendants. Tibbot Burke was Grace's most enigmatic heir. Tibbot was captured by Bingham as a teen and raised in England. He was later knighted as Sir Theobald Burke, then later reclaimed Rockfleet Castle, balancing loyalty to the crown with covert aid to Irish rebels. His life embodied the era's brutal compromises. Tibbot's son, Miles Burke, inherited Grace's defiance. In 1641, he joined the Irish rebellion against English rule, sacking Westport House, a symbol of colonial power. The Burkes held Rockfleet until the 18th century, a testament to Grace's enduring influence. Grace's legend is shrouded in myth. Let's dissect the most tantalizing tales. Let's start with the Howth Castle kidnapping. Historical records confirm the event, but Grace's demand for an open table is just plain folklore. The St. Lawrences did adopt the tradition, however, which is proof of her psychological impact. Another myth is the Clare Island ghost. Locals swear Grace's spirit haunts the island's abbey. Archaeologists found a 16th century female skeleton there in 1991, which is possibly hers. For centuries, Grace was erased from mainstream history, dismissed as a barbarian queen by British chroniclers. Her revival began with Anne Chambers' 1979 biography, Grunwald, Ireland's Pirate Queen, which unearthed forgotten archives, reigniting interest. In the 1990s, Irish feminists adopted Grace as a symbol of resistance. Scholar Mary O'Dowd notes that she proved women could lead in a world that told them they couldn't. In pop culture, Grace inspired characters in Assassin's Creed, Black Sails, and Morgan Lee Whelan's novels. In 2023, a Hollywood biopic was announced, starring Cate Blanchett as Grace. For those seeking Grace's shadow, you can go to Rockfleet Castle near Newport, Mayo. Climb the tower where Grace allegedly died, gazing at the bay she ruled. And also visit her possible gravesite at the Abbey on Clare Island and hike cliffs she once scanned for enemy sails. You can also visit Westport House, the stately home built on Grace's original castle, which still houses her sword and letters. Grace O'Malley's life defies simple categorization. She was a pirate, but also a protector, a rebel, but also a diplomat, a mother, but also a mercenary. In an age when women were erased from history, she carved her name into the strong foundations of both Ireland and England, a nuisance to empires, a hero to the oppressed. As the tides of Clew Bay still whisper her name, Grace endures not just as a historical figure, but as a beacon of audacity. In her words, reported in a 1593 petition, "I have done no more than any man would to guard my own." Yet she did far more, proving that even in the darkest storms, one woman's courage could chart a course for eternity. To walk Ireland's western coast is to walk in Grace's footsteps. Her story is etched into the cliffs, coded in the Gaelic tongue, and alive in every wave that crashes against Rockfleet's stones. The pirate queen sails on, forever unyielding, forever free. In the words of Grace herself, "I am not afraid of the storm, for I am learning to sail my own ship." 4 centuries on, her voyage inspires all who dare to rebel. Now let's switch gears to almost 100 years after Grace O'Malley's passing to the golden age of piracy, which lasted between 1690 to 1730. This was an era of chaos and opportunity, where empires clashed over Caribbean sugar, gold, and slaves. Ports like Nassau in the Bahamas became anarchic havens for outlaws, governed by the Pirate Code. A code which stated that every man has a vote, equal title to fresh provisions, and a right to gamble, but desertion or cowardice earns you marooning or death. Women were rare in this brutal world, often banned by superstition or sexism. Yet one woman, Anne Bonny, alongside her accomplice Mary Read, carved her name into history with cutlass and cunning, becoming one of the few women to thrive and terrify in this male-dominated realm. Anne Bonny was born somewhere between 1697 and 1700 near Cork, Ireland, as Anne Cormac. Her life began in scandal. Her father was William Cormac, a married lawyer, but he wasn't married to Anne's mother, a housemaid called Mary Brennan. When the affair erupted, William Cormac fled Ireland with Anne and her mother, starting over and reinventing himself as a wealthy plantation owner in Charleston, South Carolina. With a plantation-owning father, Anne grew up in luxury, educated in riding, shooting, and literature. Yet her fiery temper defied the so-called Southern gentility. Legends claim at 13, she stabbed a servant girl who insulted her mother, and at 15, nearly killed a suitor who assaulted her. Cormac then decided to arrange her marriage to a respectable local man, but Anne rejected him, declaring, "I'll not be sold like cattle." Instead, she eloped with James Bonny, a penniless sailor rumoured to be a pirate informant. Cormac disowned her, burning her belongings in a public and dramatic spectacle. Anne's marriage to James Bonny expectedly soured quickly. He traded secrets with Wooders Rogers, governor of the Bahamas, swapping pardons for pirate intel. When James betrayed Anne and offered her as a bribe to the governor, she fled, vowing, "I'll live free or die bloody." In 1718, Anne arrived in Nassau, a lawless port teeming with pirates like the legendary Blackbeard and Charles Vane. Here she shed her past and started dressing as a man to blend into the brethren of the coast. Anne's life quickly changed when she met John Calico Jack Rackham, a flamboyant pirate captain known for his striped calico coats and the Jolly Roger flag, a flag with a skull with crossed swords. Their affair began explosively. Rackham stole the ship called William from under Governor Rogers, inviting Anne aboard to join him. Once on board, she allegedly slit a crewman's throat, who questioned her place. Shortly after, in 1719, Anne became pregnant, which prompted Rackham to leave her in Cuba, where she gave birth to a son she later abandoned. Though some tales concerning her son are much darker, with some tales claiming she smothered the child, but yet others say she paid a farmer to raise him. It didn't take long for Anne to go back on the seas, because by 1720, Anne reunited with Rackham, now joined by Mary Read, a fellow female pirate disguised as a man and going by the name Mark Read. Their bond became legendary. Anne, shortly after their meeting, became smitten with Mark Read and tried to seduce her. Mary, or Mark, then revealed her gender, which sparked a fierce partnership between the two women. The duo became Rackham's enforcers, their identities an open secret among the crew. While pirate codes banned women, Rackham's crew tolerated Anne and Mary for their brutality. As one sailor wrote, "They fought like demons, drank like devils, and showed no mercy." Anne's partnership with Mary Read remains one of history's most fascinating alliances. Together, they subverted every norm because both women dressed as men, which blurred gender lines. Some historians, like Rebecca Simon, suggest their bond may have been romantic, though there is little to no evidence to support that theory. Their friendship was just highly likely very platonic, a sisterhood born out of being two women in a pirate society, which was almost exclusively very male-dominated. During raids, the two women fought side by side, their camaraderie terrifying enemies. A 1720 account from the Boston Newsletter described them as hellcats in breeches, more ruthless than any man. While legends paint them as inseparable, Mary likely joined Rackham's crew months after Anne. Their friendship, however, was genuine, a rarity in the cutthroat pirate world. Anne's piracy career burned bright but brief. Over 18 months, Rackham's crew terrorized the Caribbean. Anne and Mary had a very unique fighting style. They fought bare-breasted, using their gender to shock enemies. During a raid on the merchant ship called the Mary Sarah, Anne shot 3 men point blank, shouting, "Come dogs, meet your match." The greatest plunder of their career, however, was capturing the Jamaican ship Kingston, laden with gold, spices and weapons. Anne reportedly tortured the captain brutally for the location of hidden the coin, branding him with hot iron. Life aboard a ship was as harsh and hedonistic as you can imagine, and Anne wasn't shy to take her equal share. Anne drank rum with the crew, gambled for stolen jewels, and shared in the loot. The fact that she was a woman doesn't mean she was less brutal or powerful, because she once killed a crewman who tried to rape her, later telling Rackham, "He'll not trouble us again." The 18 months piracy career of Anne Bonny eventually came to an end. In October 1720, when British naval captain Jonathan Barnett ambushed Rackham's crew off Jamaica. Unfortunately, or is it fortunately, most pirates, including Rackham, were too drunk to fight, with only Anne and Mary alone resisting arrest. The women fired pistols and swung cutlasses, cursing their fleeing crewmates. Anne allegedly yelled, "Die like men, you cowards!" before being finally overpowered. All the captured pirates were then held in a vermin-infested jail. Shortly after, Anne and Mary faced trial alongside Rackham, which began in November 1720. The trial undeniably captivated Jamaica. Anne, defiant since childhood, continued in court, famously bitterly mocking Rackham by saying, "If you'd fought like a man, you'd not hang like a dog." After Anne and Mary were sentenced, both women ended up pleading the belly to delay execution. A court midwife then confirmed their claims, though historians debate and doubt if Anne was truly pregnant. Mary Red ended up dying in jail of fever or childbirth somewhere in April 1721. Her last words to Anne were, "We'll meet in hell, sister." But unlike Mary, who definitely can be confirmed to have died in prison, Anne's life takes a weird turn here on out. Her trail simply vanishes after 1721. With such a blank in the history of a well-known figure, naturally, theories abound. Some claim her father bribed officials to have her released. This theory becomes more plausible because records show a Anne Bonny, listed in Charleston's 1733 census as a married mother of 3. Yet other rumors persist that she joined the pirate Bartholomew Roberts's fleet or sailed to Africa. One thing we can say, however, is that no hangman's record exists of her execution, but some insist she died forgotten in jail. With so many myths surrounding Anne Bonny, which might even paint doubt on her existence, there are some hard truths that we can depend on, like her trial transcripts, Governor Rogers' letters, and Captain Charles Johnson's A General History of the Pirates, published in 1724, verify Anne's existence. Though Anne had a successful, though short, career in piracy, we can be sure that tales of her romancing Blackbeard or burying treasure are most likely just myths. In defense of Anne Bonny, her defiance of societal norms went beyond mere rebellion. It was a calculated rejection of a world that offered women little agency. In an era when women were legally considered property, Anne's choices reveal a fierce desire for autonomy. She highly despised the double standards of colonial society. While men like her father could father bastards and thrive, women like her mother were shamed into obscurity. So to Anne, piracy offered her what marriage could not. Equality. Aboard a ship and on the high seas, skill mattered more than gender. Though the piracy system was also prejudice against women, at least she was able to carve out her place in that world with her skill only. As historian Marcus Rediker notes, pirate crews were democracies in a world of monarchies. Anne found kinship in their meritocracy. It is undeniable that Anne was brutal, which has led to some scholars speculating that Anne's violence stemmed from unresolved trauma, like her father's abandonment, James Bonny's betrayal, and the dubious loss of her child. Her brutality may have been armor against vulnerability. Pirate codes were both a lifeline and a liability for Anne. Most pirate articles banned women, fearing they'd cause jealousy. Anne circumvented this by disguising herself as a man and proving her worth in battle. Pirates operated on strict profit-sharing models. Anne earned the same as male crewmen. a radical notion in 1720, polite society of the United Kingdom or the United States. Pirate justice was instantaneous and final when a crewman assaulted her. Anne didn't appeal to her ship's Captain Rackham. She killed the man herself, asserting her right to self-defense. Movies, TV shows, and books usually romanticize piracy. However, the Jamaican port where Anne was tried was no idyllic pirate haven. By 1720, Port Royal, which was once the wickedest city on earth, had been ravaged by earthquakes and British crackdowns. The place became a pirate graveyard. The 1692 earthquake sank 2/3 of the city, killing thousands. By Anne's trial, it was a shell of its former self, a grim symbol of piracy's decline. The gallows had been turned something short of a theatre. Executions were public spectacles. Crowds jeered as pirates danced the crude hempen jig. The hempen jig is simply being hanged until dead. Anne's trial was also used as a propaganda tool, warning others against rebellion. Anne's legacy has been unfortunately reshaped by centuries of myth-making, starting from way back in the 18th century and how it was sensationalized. Pamphlets painted her as a she-devil, emphasizing her sexuality over her skill. A 1721 ballad called her lusty wench who loved the blade more than the bed. In the 20th century, feminists tried to reclaim her image. They revived her story in the 1970s. Author Molly Crabapple writes that Anne Bonny wasn't a villain. She was a woman refusing to kneel. Anne was also turned into a screen siren. Like in Black Sails, a show by the Stars Network, actress Clara Paget portrays Anne as a brooding bisexual warrior. The show imagines her survival, leading a new pirate crew. Anne has also been a literary muse. Margaret Atwood referenced Anne in The Robber Bride, drawing parallels between piracy and female resistance. The mystery of Anne's fate has spawned countless theories. Like what is called the Charleston hypothesis, records show an Anne Bonny married a South Carolina merchant named Joseph Burleigh in 1721, bearing 8 children. Burleigh's will mentions a wife of tempestuous character. But was it her? There are also some who claim she fled to Cork, living as a midwife. 1746 Irish census lists an Anne McCormack, a widow with a past best forgotten. I highly doubt this one, though. Midwife? And yet there are some romanticists who insist she died in a shipwreck or resumed piracy under a new name. A 1724 Spanish log mentions a female captain with red hair raiding Panama. Could that be our Anne Bonny? I guess the mystery continues. There are many modern researchers who seek physical traces of Anne's life. Divers have explored the ruins of the 1692 earthquake, searching for artifacts from her imprisonment. In 2018, a farmer near Baracoa claimed to find a 1720-era locket engraved AB, though experts have dismissed it as a hoax. Right now, if Anne's Charleston descendants exist, genetic testing could confirm ties, but no living claimants have come forward. Listening to Anne Bonny's story, many enduring questions arise. You would wonder, was she a hero or a villain? Because Anne robbed and killed, but so did every pirate. And yet, her crimes were no worse than state-sanctioned violence of empires. You could also wonder, what defines freedom? Anne traded societal safety for a short, wild life. Was she truly free, or trapped by her own rage? And last, why does she fascinate us? In a world still grappling with gender inequality, Anne Bonny symbolizes the cost and power of defiance. Anne Bonny's story is a Rorschach test, seen as a cautionary tale, feminist anthem, or queer icon, depending on the lens. Her life forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about power, gender, and freedom. As pirate historian David Cordingley writes, she was a mirror held up to society, reflecting its injustices back in blood and fire. Whether she died on the gallows or in a quiet bed, Anne Bonny's spirit sails on, a ghostly figure on the horizon, forever out of reach, forever challenging us to rebel. If you seek Anne Bonny, you can read The Republic of Pirates by Colin Woodard for context on Nassau's rise and fall. If reading isn't really your thing, you can watch The Lost Pirate Kingdom, a Netflix docuseries, which dramatizes her partnership with Mary Read. In the end, Anne Bonny remains uncontainable, a storm in human form, forever rewriting her own legend. With a Portuguese girl, she fed me salt cod and wine until I heard. We travel once again to another century, after the famous escapades of Anne Bonny, to the early 19th century's South China Sea. This place was a swirling vortex of danger and profit. The Qing dynasty was weakened by corruption and the White Lotus Rebellion, and the empire struggled to control coastal waters. European colonial powers like Portugal, Britain, and the Dutch all vied for trade dominance, while rival pirate clans like the Black Flag and White Flag fleets turned the sea into a battleground. Into this crazy, maddening maelstrom, with many players wanting a foothold, stepped Ching Shih, a woman who transformed piracy from a disorganized trade into a corporate empire. Ching Shih is also popularly known as Zheng Yi Sao, which simply means wife of Zheng Yi. Her birth name, Shi Yang, was erased. I would like to think of it as a metaphor for her reinvention. It was only later in life that Shi Yang, aka Zheng Yi Sao, became known as Ching Shih. Her origins began in the floating brothels of Canton, where she was sold to a huajin or flower boat brothel as a child. There, she navigated a world of exploitation. These floating brothels, frequented by merchants and pirates, taught her to read men's desires and weaknesses. While working on the flower boats, Shi Yang learned the art of negotiation. She famously bargained with a client to double her fee by threatening to expose his affairs to his wife. This audacity caught the eye of Zheng Yi, a pirate commander who saw her as a strategic asset. Their 1801 marriage was less romance than merger. Zheng Yi needed her sharp intellect to unite the Red Flag fleet. There she gained a platform to ascend from prostitution to sovereignty. After Zheng Yi's mysterious death, which might have been a possible poisoning by rivals in 1807, Ching Shih moved swiftly to consolidate power. The first thing she did was to marry her husband's adopted son and protégé, Zhang Bao. Zhang Bao was a charismatic 21-year-old commander. Their union managed to quell dissent among young pirates and ensured their loyalty. Shortly after, the Purge of 1808 happened, where she invited rival captains to a feast. There, her loyalists beheaded them mid-banquet. Their ships were then absorbed into her fleet. She also instituted the Pirate Codex Article 8. These laws were revolutionary in their brutality and fairness. They instituted strict laws to transform a ragtag band of pirates into a disciplined force. They stated concerning plunder distribution that 20% went to individual crews, 80% to the fleet's central treasury, which funded weapons, bribes, and injured pirates. The Codex also laid down the rules concerning discipline. It said that deserters were to be beheaded, and disobedient crewmen had their ears sliced off, among other things. Her codex also included women and civilians, and it stated that captured women could not be raped. They were either ransomed or married with their consent, and violators were to be executed. This was a radical policy in an era of rampant piracy. She also ensured that social safety nets were instituted. Like if pirates were maimed in battle, they received compensation of 800 silver coins for every lost limb. This code transformed her fleet into a disciplined, loyal force. By 1809, she commanded 1,800 ships, more than most national navies. Ching Shih did not run a simple pirate fleet. She ran a seafaring conglomerate. With that strong force at her fingertips, she dominated the South China Sea. Ching Shih's strategies combined military genius, psychological warfare, and economic manipulation. She ran a protection racket where merchants paid her sea taxes for safe passage. Those who refused faced annihilation. A British East India Company report fumed, "Her flags fly on every junk, her word is law." She also put up blockades that led to starvation, like how, in 1808, she blockaded Guangzhou, strangling the Qing's rice and salt trade. Prices soared to 400%, and the city neared famine. She also made alliances with corrupt officials. She bribed Qing naval officers for weapons and tip-offs. One admiral in particular, Lin Gua, secretly supplied her with European cannons. Ching Shih then collaborated with the Tanka boat people, ethnic fisherfolk, to infiltrate coastal villages, turning locals into informants. During the 1809 Battle of the Tiger's Mouth, she filled old ships with tar and gunpowder, sending them ablaze into the Qing fleet. Over 60 warships burned, scattering the imperial navy. By 1810, the Qing Empire was on its knees. The empire faced economic collapse because Ching Shih controlled 90% of salt trade routes, a necessity for food preservation. Coastal cities begged the emperor for aid. There was boiling foreign frustration as the Portuguese and British, eager to protect their opium and tea trade, sent warships to crush her. All of them failed miserably. A British captain wrote in awed frustration that her fleet moves like a single beast, swift, ruthless, and endless. A bounty was then put on her head, worth 400,000 taels. The Qing offered a fortune for her capture. Ching Shih responded to that by doubling ransoms for captured officials, turning the target from her to her pursuers. Like all great tacticians, Ching Shih knew when to pull back, when to bow out while people are still clapping. Therefore, she came up with a truce that shocked empires. In 1810, facing internal fatigue and a British-Qing alliance, Ching Shih orchestrated a surrender that basically cemented her legend. She negotiated from strength. Among her demands was a full amnesty for all 17,000 plus of her pirates. She also requested that she retained all of her plundered wealth. If you think she stopped there, she didn't. Because what more would she want? You might wonder. Well, she also wanted official titles for her inner circle. Zhang Bao, her husband, became a Qing naval captain. To top it all off, she wanted a luxurious retirement. She did so, keeping a gambling den and smuggling ring in Guangdong. The Qing at this point was desperate to end the war, so they agreed to every single one of her demands. Ching Shih then retired at only 35 years old, her fortune intact and her legacy untarnished. Ching Shih's post-piracy career was as calculated as her reign. The gambling empire, her Macau casino, called the Golden Lotus, became a hub for smugglers and corrupt officials. She then created a family dynasty by arranging marriages for her children into wealthy merchant families, laundering her pirate gold into legitimacy. Unfortunately, this legend died in obscurity in 1844, at age 68, likely from illness. Rumors persist she was buried with a map to hidden treasure. None has been found as of yet. There are many myths that have surrounded the Dragon Queen, so let's debunk some of them. Like the kind pirate myth, where some modern retellings soften her image, but Qing records note she once ordered 300 prisoners drowned to save supplies. Then there is the romance with Zhang Bao. Some films romanticize their bond, but historical letters suggest theirs was a pragmatic partnership. Zhang Bao later took multiple concubines. Ching Shih's sole focus was on business. There was also European fear-mongering. The British accounts exaggerated her brutality to justify colonialism. In truth, her code protected civilians more than European pirates ever did their own. Looking back at Ching Shih's reign over the South China Sea, which only lasted between 1807 to 1810, one cannot be impressed with how it was a masterclass in organized crime, military strategy, and psychological warfare. Her career was not merely a series of raids, but a calculated campaign to control trade, corrupt governments, and build an empire. Ching Shih's fleet was a dominant military stronghold as it defeated every force sent against her, including the Qing Navy, Portuguese warships, and British privateers. At the Battle of the Tiger's Mouth, in 1809, when the Qing ambushed her fleet near Guangzhou, she deployed fireships, old vessels packed with tar and gunpowder, to incinerate 63 imperial warships. The surviving Qing admiral, Lin Guo, then defected to her side. After Portuguese warships attacked her fleet in 1809, near Macau, she retaliated by sacking Portuguese trade posts, capturing their cannons, and executing officers. She then ordered captured Qing officials to write letters begging their families for ransom, then circulated the pleas to demoralize enemies. Here are some of her key tactics which grew her piracy empire, starting with a corporate structure. Ching Shih ran her fleet like a corporation, with profit-sharing, HR policies like her code, and a centralized treasury. She also ran a hybrid type of warfare. It combined naval battles, blockades, and economic sabotage to weaken foes. Ching Shih wasn't above using her identity as a woman to manipulate Qing officials, who underestimated her until it was too late. She also portrayed herself as a protector of coastal villages against corrupt Qing officials, earning her grassroots support. They considered her a Robin Hood of some sort. Ching Shih's career was not a reckless spree, but a calculated empire-building project. She weaponized chaos, exploited systemic corruption, and retired undefeated, a feat no other pirate, male or female, has matched. As historian Diane Murray concludes, she wasn't just a pirate. She was the CEO of history's most successful maritime syndicate. Her career remains a blueprint for turning outlaw chaos into absolute power. Feminists have taken her as someone to emulate because, in Confucian China, where women were confined to inner chambers, Ching Shih ruled an army. A scholar who goes by then named Wang Feng asks, was she a feminist or a tyrant? She was both, a product of her ruthless world. He then answers, the structure she instituted mirrors modern crime syndicates like drug cartels and triads. Historians compare her to El Chapo, but, of course, unlike El Chapo, she had much smarter and better retirement plans. Ching Shih has been immortalized in pop culture, as she rightly deserves. But not nearly enough, in my opinion. She was featured in the pirate Empress in 2022, and Ching Shih, the Dragon Lady, which was a graphic novel. Netflix's Marco Polo. A 2014 production, they depicted her as a scheming ally of Kublai Khan. This was, of course, a fictional twist. In gaming, she leads the pirate faction in Civilization 4's Barbarian Clans mode. There are many unanswered mysteries surrounding her legend. One of them being the lost treasure. Legends claim she hid 50 chests of silver in Ha Long Bay. Till now, divers still search. There are also the rumored secret letters, which persist that Ching Shih blackmailed the Qing emperor with letters proving his family's corruption. None have surfaced yet. In essence, Ching Shih's story defies simple labels. She was a brothel worker turned CEO of history's largest pirate conglomerate. Yes, even famous pirate like Blackbeard don't even come close to what she built. She was a mother who commanded fleets and a negotiator who outsmarted empires. As historian Stephen Turnbull writes, she wasn't just a pirate, she was a one-woman revolution. In the end, Ching Shih proved that even the mightiest empires could be humbled by a woman who refused to kneel. What is her legacy, you might ask? A simple truth. The sea bows to no king. If you would like to walk in Ching Shih's footsteps and take a dive deeper into who she was, you can visit Guangdong's Temple of the South Sea Goddess, where pirates prayed before raids, and also the Guangdong's Maritime Museum to see artifacts from her fleet. You can also explore the Hong Kong Maritime Museum's exhibit on her coded maps and weapons. You must also explore the tanker boat communities, descendants of her pirate crews. But if traveling is a bit too expensive for you, you can read Dragon Lady by Jin Yong. It is a non-fiction account which blends history and myth. Or watch The Legend of Ching Shih, made in 2023. It is a Hong Kong series dramatizing her rise. Her reign may have ended, but the Dragon Queen's shadow still darkens the waves, a reminder that power, like the tide, waits for no one. Today, Ching Shih's name evokes awe and terror. Was she a villain? A revolutionary? Perhaps both. As pirate chronicler Jan Rogosinski writes, she was the CEO of history's largest criminal syndicate, a tyrant, but a visionary. In the end, Ching Shih's greatest plunder was immortality, a queen who bent empires to her will, then vanished into legend, forever unrivaled. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.